What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly sports history for April 26, 2023. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. It's come to my attention in the past few weeks. We have a lot of new listeners, so just wanted to say welcome. This is This Day in Philly Sports History. This is a daily. We take a look at what happened on this day in Philly sports history and go through some of the things that are currently happening in the state, I guess I like to call it, of Philly sports. So welcome. If you were a listener of Back to the Future and you're just finding this, again, welcome. If you're listening to this and you don't know about Back to the Future, I have another longer weekly podcast, Back to the Future with a PH, where we take a deeper dive into specific events, seasons, things like that happened in Philly sports history too. That comes out weekly, Back to the Future with a PH. I post the video on YouTube, and it's also anywhere you get your podcast. So be sure to check that out. No matter which way you found yourself here today, welcome. I am so glad to have you. One of the things I like to do, and loyal listeners, you guys know, I'm always trying to make sure I'm presenting things that 100% factual. And when I do make a mistake or omit something, I definitely come back the next day. So I wanted to address the whole Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris thing that I mentioned yesterday. I think I oversimplified it more than what it really was. It was a lot more complicated. It wasn't necessarily that they chose Tobias over Jimmy. I think the way the cap was at the time, they could have managed to pay both of them. It's just Tobias got a max contract, and they did the sign and trade with Jimmy Butler. But ultimately, what they did was they chose Ben Simmons and Brett Brown over Jimmy Butler. Brown and Butler didn't necessarily see eye to eye. Butler didn't understand why Brown was switching up what worked in the regular season for the playoffs, and he wasn't sure if it was catering to Ben. Like, just basically question it, which I think as Sixers fans, we all were questioning it. And there was pressure from the front office on Brett Brown being able to control Jimmy Butler if they re-signed him. Brown didn't like it. And ultimately, they sided with Brett Brown, which after the fact, Jimmy Butler said, he was like, listen, man, it was a hot mess. We didn't know who was in charge, what was happening. So I just wanted to make sure I realized as I was listening back, I made it seem like they chose Tobias over Jimmy Butler. Wasn't quite that simple. It's ultimately they chose Ben Simmons over Jimmy Butler, and it still is annoying when you see Jimmy dropping 56 on the Bucks, but such is life. Sticking with the Sixers, thank you, Mr. Trae Young. I think we all owe him a Harry David gift basket for hitting just a super ridiculously deep three to beat the Celtics yesterday and to extend that series and give Joe the extra 2 days of rest. I feel as though it's the best case scenario for his health. At this point, I still think Boston wins that series, and it's going to be a battle. But, I mean, you never know. They could come back, and Atlanta could come out on fire at home, which could possibly be their last home game of the season. They could come out and shock the world and make this series go 7. I've seen stranger things happen in the NBA. So, listen, the longer this series goes, the better it is for the Sixers, who are at home resting. Joe's resting that knee. It came out yesterday with the brace. But I'm not that concerned. It never once did it say he's definitely out. And I think it seems as though he's just going to have to play through pain. And if there's anything we know about Joe over the years, he can play through pain and does. And it's, as I mentioned yesterday too, it's going to be incumbent upon those other players to really step it up. And they, knock on wood, they have been. And I don't want to go there yet. But with that Phillies run, we talked a lot about New Philly. With the Eagles Super Bowl run, we talked a lot about New Philly. And if we're going to apply that same logic, things are sort of breaking our way, especially with Trae Young. I mean, that three yesterday was insanely deep. And the way they battled back in that game, things are kind of... I'm not going to quite go there yet because I still have some old Philly mindsets, but this is kind of like things are sort of break. Everybody thought, oh, things are breaking the way for the Celtics. Now all of a sudden, I'm not so sure, but they play tomorrow night, and I would love to see them go another game 7. I will have the Sixers Celtics or Sixers Hawks preview. I'll record that for Back to the Future over the weekend, depending upon when the game ends or the series ends. So stay tuned for that. Union are in LA tonight for the CONCACAF Cup Champion League semifinal. They play the home and home aggregate, I think is what they call it, where they take the total goals scored in both games. So looking forward to that. Phillies kind of had a stinker yesterday against the Mariners. Bailey Falter was good except for the fifth and sixth innings where he gave up the 3 earned runs. They dropped 5-3. But either way, I think, especially when you got Bailey Falter on the mound, you have to score more than 3 runs. Excuse me. And it's starting to get concerning just how inconsistent this offense is. I always go back to Charlie Manuel, though, and he always said it's hitting season. So hopefully now that we're getting ready to turn the calendar over till May, the weather's going to start getting warmer. They can get more consistency out of that offense. Bryce, hopefully May 1st, next Monday, it's going to be a big day. Sixers play as well as Bryce's doctor's appointment, so hopefully we get some good news there. Tomorrow, Ranger Suarez is making a rehab start down in Reading. So that likely means if everything goes well, he could be coming back within the next week or so. So things they're keeping their heads above water right now. It looks like the Braves got off to the hot start, but eventually they'll cool down. So I'm okay with where we are right now. I just want to see more consistency. But we're going to stick with the Phillies, and we're going to go back to 1959. And on this day, April 26, 1959, the Pirates beat the Phils at Connie Mack 9-2. Left fielder Harry Anderson went 2 for 3 with a triple, but not much else went right for the Phils that day. An interesting side note, though, relief pitcher Gene Conley pitched 3 innings in relief, gave up a couple hits. I don't even know if he gave up any runs or not, but the biggest thing is he was 6'8". And to this day, still, he is the tallest Philly to ever play in a game. He was traded to the Phillies on March 31st, so kind of late in spring training. I'll give you more on that in a minute. He did go on to the All-Star game in 1959. He went 12-7 with a 3.0 ERA. Did miss the last month or so of the season because he broke his wrist, I believe it was, or his thumb. But they were a last-place team in 1959. They went 64-90. But back to the trade. The Braves traded him due to him being late to spring training due to his other job, which was with the Boston Celtics, who were going on an extended playoff run that year. He was a player for the Boston Celtics. He's the only two-sport athlete, I should say, to win a title in both sports. So he won a World Series title with the Braves and a couple NBA titles with the Celtics. So just an interesting fact, something that Bo Jackson didn't do. Bo Jackson didn't win one. Deion did win one, I believe, with the Braves. Never won one. I don't know if Deion ever won one with the Braves. Now I got to check on that to make sure I give you the facts, but I know he won one with the Niners. So there you go. On this day, Gene Conley, two-sport star, became the tallest pitcher ever, or tallest player ever, I should say, to play for the Phillies at 6'8". All right, we are just a couple days away from the draft. I will be editing the Back to the Future draft preview on my lunch break today, so that should be up later this afternoon. But today we're going to spotlight Brodrick Bunkely. The Tampa native went number 14 overall in 2006 out of Florida State. If you remember, he was a nose tackle. He played 5 years with the Eagles, 06 through 2010, and just basically did nothing spectacular as a player. He just was kind of there. I guess he was okay against the run because he was big, but he's probably best known for being suspended for a game his rookie year because he missed the team flight because he said he was picking up fried chicken from one of the other players. It's part of the rookie hazing ritual. So, I completely forgot about that, but as soon as it came up, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's the only Brodrick Bunkely highlight I can remember. He was traded to the Browns, didn't report to them, so the trade was rescinded. He was later traded to the Broncos. Finished his career with the Eagles, 6 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and 7 passes deflected. I guess you could classify him as a first-round bust. Again, I mean, he played 5 years and he was a starter. But when you have the 14th pick and you draft somebody, you expect something a little bit more than that. And especially since you're best known for missing a team flight for picking up fried chicken from one of your teammates, I would say qualify this one as a bust. But I can't even say his name. I never could. Brodrick Bunkely, number 14 overall in 2006 out of Florida State. On this day, back in 1959, Gene Conley became the tallest player to ever play for the Phillies. Trae Young, your Harry David gift basket is on the way. If anybody out there wants to contribute to a charity of Trae Young's choice, I think I'm going to give $10. I see what charity he follows, but that was a huge shot, huge for the Sixers, and especially if they can somehow beat the Celtics in the next round, or even the Hawks for that matter. That's going to end up being a huge, huge shot and a huge turning point for this playoff season. So thank you, Trae Young, even though you ripped our hearts out a couple years ago. Hopefully the Phillies get back on the winning track tonight against the Mariners. Go Union. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History. I'm Jim Montgomery. Go have yourself some Wednesday, and until next time, I'll see you when I see you.